If strangers walk into our worship services, sometimes they're standing on the side and think, what are these people doing? Are they purpose in all these songs they sing and the prayers they say and the scriptures they read and the message they bring? Because out there, we just go on and we don't need this. Apparently, amongst the Catholics, there's a saying that says, spot the Protestant. Now, they do that whenever a Protestant visits the Catholic Church and you are in that church and you don't know what's going on. You don't know when to stand, when to kneel, when to sit, when to read, when to keep quiet, or when to listen. And I think many people would come into our Protestant worship services and kind of experience the same thing, because our liturgy flows, and the one thing follows the other, sometimes without any announcements. And here we are this morning, and we listen to the first words of Mary when she said, "My soul magnifies the Lord." And that is known as the Magnificat. Now, the Magnificat is a great hymn throughout history within all churches and within all Christian faith denominations. But especially within the Protestant faith, in the what we call the high churches, the church downtown, the important one where all the important people go to. And they would have these high liturgies, and the Magnificat will feature quite prominently in the liturgy. It's a beautiful poetic hymn of Mary, where she sings about something very special. But the other parts of the Bible is also very important. And if we go into the Bible, we see quite a diverse number of literatures, or kinds of literatures. There's the law, which we find in the Torah. There's more poetic parts, which we find in the Psalms and in a book like Proverbs. We find the wisdom literature in the wisdom books. We find the prophetic literature in the prophetic books, and we find the gospel literature in the Gospels of Jesus. And every specific literature in the Bible were used for a specific message and to bring that message across to the listeners or to the hearers, even to us, 2,000 years after Christ walked on this earth. But the important question for us is, what does it mean to me? Because it's easy to come in and sit in a liturgy or in a worship service and go with the motion and go with the flow and sing where you need to sing and pray where you need to pray. But does that mean anything for you as the individual, as the person of faith sitting here? There is two consequences when we hear the teachings of Jesus. The first consequence is it can touch you and it can change your life. Or, on the other side, it can haunt your consciousness because it doesn't speak to you for whatever reason that may be. And when we read the Magnificat in a magnificent way, it introduces us to everything that Jesus would do in his life. Here is Mary, pregnant with Jesus, and she sings about what he will do when he's a grown person on the earth. Things like, put down the mighty. Just think how he was with the Sadducee and the Pharisee, the priests, and even the great Sanhedrin in the temple of Herod when he cleansed that temple. We read that she says he will be lifting up the lowly. You can remind yourself of him walking down a street and call Zacchaeus out of a tree and go into his house, a tax collector, somebody that everybody frowned upon. You can remind yourself where he sat at the well speaking to a woman in the first place, which is very strange, and secondly, a Samaritan woman, and then bring her to the way of a new life. And Mary says he will be feeding the hungry, and all of us know the story of the multitude that he fed with bread and fish, but we also know how he feeds our souls with the water of life. And then she goes on and said, but the rich, We'll turn away empty-handed, and we remind ourselves of the rich man coming to him and saying, Jesus, Lord, what should I do? And he said, follow the law. And he said, but I've done that. I'm really good at following the law. And then Jesus said, did you sell everything and gave it to the poor? And then that man turned away very sad because he can't do that. In 1998, David Rhodes wrote a book, The Advent Adventure. Quite interesting. And he writes in this book about this meeting on the picture. He was one of the 500 delegates of the Church of England to the General Synod in London. And there the church gathers like the United Church and all other denominations do. And they gather to talk about the future of the church, where we are, what we do, and what we should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing. And I want to read to you in his words what he said, where he expected this should be a wonderful gathering, where people are joyful and filled with enthusiasm and filled with plans to be the church of Christ. He found the meeting like a conference of undertakers discussing the recent price hike in coffins. Nothing seems to be changing. I can recall myself in a meeting in the beginning of fall of our regional council where there was a new point made in the meeting and everybody said, well, this is going to lead to a long and lengthy discussion and we should be finishing at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And then they decided, let's make this meeting an hour longer. They discussed for an hour long if we should make the meeting an hour longer. A year ago in this church, I was quite still, finding my feet, and we had a board meeting, and we discussed for 45 minutes garbage bags. And within 3 minutes, we approved the new way the church wants to move into the affirming process. Where's the priorities? And that's the question I'm struggling with as serving in the Church of Christ. Where are our priorities? As a young boy, I grew up in South Africa, and Christmas down there is quite different from Christmas up here because as I walked here this morning, it was minus 18. Now, if you go to South Africa on a Christmas morning worship service, it would be kind of like 32 degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit, degrees Celsius. So it's hot. So we have our Christmas worship services on a Christmas morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning, before the real heat sets in. And I can remember sitting in the packed church at 6 o'clock in the morning, and a dreary old tired minister hanging over the pulpit in a monotone going on about the joy of Christmas. And I was just tired listening to that. So where is the joy and the love and all these candles that we lit over the 4 weeks of Advent to remind us of the peace and joy and love of Christ that came to this world? We sometimes forget about it because we are caught up in being the church, in what we think we should be. So in Luke 1, Luke came and he gave us the Magnificat, the Song of Mary. And we find here the joy of being pregnant. 2 women came together and Elizabeth said to Mary, "You are the blessed one." And Mary says, "Yes, I know, I can't believe it, I'm so blessed." And they describe the movement of the little babies in their womb when this meeting happened. But there's also a mystery about this. A mystery of what is Luke trying to tell us? Because the question is, was he there? How would he know the exact words of Mary and Elizabeth? Because the book of the Gospel of Luke was written roughly in the year 85 or 90 after Christ, which means roughly 60, 70 years after the crucifixion. So how did he know the exact words of Mary and Elizabeth? But to put that question a little bit to the side so that we can focus on what we do with what Luke is telling us here. Because what happens here? In a short summary, Mary, being pregnant, Jesus was not born yet, give us a kind of a view on the ministry and the teachings and the life of this baby that she carries in her, what he will do when he grows up, and how he will change not only Palestine, but also the whole of the world. And there we find ourselves. Are we as a church of Christ in the business of changing lives? Are we as a church in the business of changing, waking up awareness, changing consciousness, the way you see life, the way you see others, the way you experience God? Are we in the business waking up people to the evil matrix that we are caught up in to keep you powerless? Because that is the business that we should be in. But I find the church these days trying to be in the business of entertainment. We try to be in competition with Sunday school sport and everything the schools present to the kids on Sundays. We try to be in competition with the local theater and the movie theaters and the stage productions and everything that is out there that is available as entertainment. And we are losing. We're losing the battle. And the question is why? Why can't we be so entertaining like the world out there? And then you go to some churches and they really try hard. You know, with the best secular orchestra that you can find with guitars and drums and name it, and it's there. And oh boy, if you walk in there, there's a sound that hits you in your face and you think for the first 5 minutes, wow, I want to be here. And then when you sit here, you think, you know, Taylor Swift is better at this. These people can learn from her. It's because we find ourselves in the wrong business. That's why we are failing. We are not in the entertainment business. We are in the business to speaking to the very soul of every person in this world, to wake them up, to bring them the real way of life, and to show them that way by becoming the way of Jesus. And I use the word the way a lot because the early Christian people, before the Council of Nicaea in 325 after Christ, was known as people of the way. Christian was a name that the Roman Church started with and the Roman Empire started with. Before that, we were known as people of the way. What way? The way of Christ, the way of love, the way of peace, the way of joy. That is the way that us as a church should be on. But we went astray. And then Luke comes in the Gospel of Luke through the Magnificat, and he also showed us some other part of this way. He talks about Mary and he talks about Elizabeth. Two women that Luke, in a very special way, he lifts them up and he presents them to us as the blessed women of their time and maybe of all times. Because women in the Bible has not been regarded on the same level as men. Let's be honest. There were laws that determined the woman, the wife, is the property of her man or the husband. And when the husband passes away, then the oldest son will take over the leading position in the family, not the mother. The son will take over. And this was embedded in the patriarchal system of the people of the time. If you read through the Bible, you know, King Solomon had how many wives? Hundreds, and concubines. You know, all of them belonged to him. David took Bathsheba when he wanted her. She didn't have a say. And that's the way women got treated in the Bible times. We read of some women that tried to stand up like Deborah in the book of Judges. And then we read in Luke 1 of Mary and of Elizabeth. And it's the first time that we find the emancipation of women right there in the Bible. And they are being lifted up by the writer or the author of the Gospel of Luke. The church is not known that we fought the fight on behalf of women. To this day, the single Reformed Church in South Africa still don't allow women ministers, pastors, elders, or deacons. Women do not have a vote in the general meeting of the congregation. They're there to make the coffee and to serve the bread rolls and the cake that they baked for the leadership that gathers, which is all male. And then you go to Canada, and you find a lot of evangelical churches that functions on the same way. All the leadership of male, no females. And we see ourselves as a very modern country in Canada. And yet, the church is not on the forefront for fighting for women's rights. And here Luke is right there in the front row to say, see these two women, Elizabeth and Mary, they are so blessed. And what a joyous occasion that is. And then we can focus on them and we can listen to Luke in the Gospel of Luke. Because it is very relevant that all human beings are seen equal. That all human beings are seen as children of God. Regardless of what labels you want to hang around your neck, within your innermost private rooms, you find your soul. And your soul comes from God. And that is the business of the church, to speak to that soul, to reach that soul beyond the coat that I put on, or the dress that I wear, or the face that I have on this body. Because what is important is your soul. And we can have the greatest liturgies and the biggest bands, and we can have the most uplifting worship services. If it doesn't speak to your soul, it means nothing. Then it's entertainment, which we are not very good in. So we have here probably the most magnificent hymn ever written in the Bible literature. And we call it the Magnificat. And if you go and Google search it, there will be many presentations how choirs and churches sing this beautiful hymn that started with Mary's words when she started out and saying, I am so blessed, my soul glorifies the Lord. And then she goes on. The primal joy and the breaking of the evil matrix, the knowing and the knowledge to see that women are not lesser than men and that we are all the same because we are all souls. And then Jesus came and Mary said and exalted those of low degree. That's what he will do. And he did exactly that. And in the world, there's a leap in awareness. We suddenly know there's life out there. We fly to the moon. We put a robot on Mars and it sent back pictures to show us what the planet looks like. Our understanding is growing of this universe that we find ourselves in. We expect, this is dangerous terrain, we expect extraterrestrials to visit us soon if they are not yet here already. There's debate going on about that. And then the words of the Magnificat that says, He will fill the hungry with good things. And how He filled the hungry in body, but above all, how He filled the hungry souls with the water of life. And if you drank from that, you will never thirst ever again. Can we hear the no-nonsense attitude of Jesus in the words of the Magnificat? He didn't tolerate any nonsense, because the Magnificat said, He has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He has put down the mighty from their thrones, and the rich He has sent empty away. And oh boy, how did He pull the mighty church down from its throne? And I'm still waiting for the Pope to fall down his 40 million golden throne and break that into pieces and give it to the poor. That day will come. Because this man that Mary expected, he didn't take nonsense. He called it by its name, and He showed us the way. And that is what He asks from His church. The representatives of Him in this world. His life changed the history of humanity. His life changed the course of history of this whole planet that we live on. And that is the talk and the business of this church. To change the course of history in this society that we live in. And how do we do it? Not with magic, not with guesswork, by becoming the way of Jesus. By embodying His no-nonsense message, and by living it out there. Putting your money where your mouth is. That is the way of Jesus. And that's the song of the Magnificat, the greatest hymn ever written. He will lift you when you are low. He will exalt you when you reach out to Him. He will change you by feeding you the water of life. He will touch your soul by His joy and His love. You will never be the same again if you come into real contact with the way of Jesus Christ. And that is something to sing about and write poems about and be church for. To bring that through us, through you, as you sit here today, through your life, through your words, through your actions, no nonsense, the message of unconditional love. Amen.